So good afternoon. My name is Virginia, and I am with the Public Access Room, which is your office at the Capitol. And today we're going to talk about floor sessions and orders of the day. Talk about what happens when the senators and the House members are convened in their chambers. First thing to note is that they call the agenda the order of the day. It's a very fancy way of saying it's the agenda. And, so it basically will tell you what is going on the floor on any given day. And the House puts one out, House order of the day, the Senate puts one out. So the Senate order of the day is going to look a little bit different than the House order of the day. And that's because the two chambers, the House and the Senate, always do things just a little bit differently. So we'll see that throughout this presentation. So the order of the day is only issued when they are actually going to convene in chamber. And what that means is if you look at the legislative calendar, there are 60 session days. They're the ones with the little box in the lower right-hand corner of the calendar that count the 60 session days. The other days are recess days. And so they don't meet in session on recess days or on holidays or on weekends. And recess days, even though it sounds like, the members are free to do whatever they like, they actually do have committee hearings and things scheduled for those days. And in fact, sometimes they're, really full of hearings, especially the money committees, because they can just go all day long without having to break for session. So as I mentioned, it's indicated on the calendar if there is session that day. And as far as when they're going to convene, you can always find the convene times down on the homepage of the legislature's website, capitol.hawaii.gov. You just scroll down to where it says session info, and it'll tell you when the House and Senate are next going to convene. Generally, it's going to be at 11:30 for the Senate and at 12 noon for the House. And the order of the day is usually, right now they're being published well in advance of the convene time. But sometimes it's only, like within the hour that they're going to convene that you can find the order of the day. So you'll find it under the Events tab, and it'll look like this. It'll say HOD or SOD. I do encourage you to use the PDF versions of the order of the day. They're identical in content, but especially if there's a lot of items on the order of the day, the speaker or president may refer to page numbers, and to keep up with things, use the PDF link. It makes it a little bit easier. And there are also sometimes supplemental documents. You'll see this a lot for the Senate, and they have recently been having some supplemental orders of the day. If you look for yesterday, you'll notice there's a supplemental order of the day, which basically just lists some re-referrals that they're doing. The House, in contrast, when they do something like a re-referral, they tend to show it on the order of the day and just link to a House referral sheet. So they do things a little differently from one chamber to the other. And you'll see that on the Senate side, they've got the Hawaiian language and then the English language translation. And they've been doing that for a few years now. They don't do that in the House. We'll see how you'll notice the invocation is noted on the right side on the House Order of the day, it's not noticed on the Senate side. They still do an invocation, but it's not on the agenda. So just the order that they put things in, the wording that they use, even the way that they link, to status pages and committee reports and the content of the bill is different from one chamber to the other. So you just, get used to that. They also have some different customs and things like that. The order of the day, as I mentioned, is indicated on the House agenda. It used to be different. It used to be part of the formal agenda, and there was some concern about that. And so now what happens is they'll have the invocation or a moment of contemplation before they gavel in the session and start to take members the roll, call the roll. So it's before they gavel in. And in fact, in the House, they will have the cameras on and show you the invocation as part of the YouTube video. Whereas on the Senate, we don't see that at all. So there are some routine items. They want to find out who's here, who's not. Members are supposed to be present for session unless they've been excused. Approval of journal, that's just kind of like approving the minutes. The journal records everything that goes on the floor. Then they'll note if there are any messages from the governor, from the judiciary, from the other chamber, and then they'll get down to business. And they'll have floor presentations sometimes at the beginning of session, and those will be noted on the order of the day. In fact, sometimes they'll even note the floor sessions for the following day at the end of the order of the day. And they can be, recognizing a sports team or an organization or a public servant or, an event, all kinds of things. And I think each chamber has their way of organizing who gets to sign up for a floor presentation. So that's really done internally with the House and Senate clerk's offices. And then we get into the introduction of bills and resolutions. At the very start of session, you'll have resolutions that are noted here are, the Senate rules, for example, could be presented by a resolution. With the introduction of bills, it can sometimes just be HB numbers, this to that, or introductions of this number of resolutions. So, and with the introduction of bills, rapidly following the introduction of bills is the first reading of bills by title, and they'll vote on those. Yeah, just want to note that sometimes they will use resolutions to publish the committee membership, for example, or rules and things like that. And so when they are, so bills get introduced and, they're just the bill numbers, 1, 2, whatever. And then when the committees report out of committee a bill, either in an amended form or as it was when they got it, they will issue a committee report. And you'll see on the order of the day, the bills will be listed not in order of bill number, but in order of committee report number. So at first that can be a little confusing to you because it's like, why are they jumping from here to here to here? It's all the committee report numbers that they're following. And if you're trying to find something on the order of the day, of course, you can always use, the Control F for find and type in the bill number and it'll jump so you can see where it is on the order of the day. So the readings are very important because that's what it needs to pass a bill out of the legislature. They need to have 3 readings on separate days in both chambers. And if they are going to vote on a bill for the 3rd or final time, they have to have had that bill in the form that they're going to vote on. So if it's a CD1 or conference draft 1 or a House draft 1, they need to have that version of the bill in their possession for at least 48 hours before they can be asked to vote on it. So one of the questions we often get is on your bill status sheet. When we get close to crossover, you'll start to see 48 hours notice, and then it'll have a date. And that date will be the date that it will appear on the order of the day for 3rd reading. And just a little note that usually it requires a majority of those present to pass a reading, but for 3rd or final reading, it has to be a majority of the members that the chamber is actually made of. So if it's 51 members of the House, they've got to have 26 members to pass something on 3rd or final reading, even if there are only 45 members present or something like that. As far as resolutions are concerned, with the Senate concurrent resolutions and House concurrent resolutions, usually just as a courtesy to the members, they will note that the following session day, the members will be asked to vote on whether the resolution should be adopted or not. And it's not a requirement, but it's something that both chambers routinely do. And you'll also see on the orders of the day the committee reports from the committees that have considered one of the governors or the judiciary's advise and consent items for a judge or for a department director, that kind of thing. And again, while it's not required, usually what they will do is they will note the committee report, and they'll have a link to the status page, and they'll give the members 24 hours notice that they're going to be voted on whether or not to confirm. And at the end, they go through, readings, and they go through resolutions. When they're done with all of their business, the presiding member, the Speaker of the House or the Senate President will usually ask if there are any announcements. And I didn't mention earlier, but at the very beginning, they usually also ask if there are any introductions. And that's when sometimes if you have a special group that's present in the Capitol that the member wants to acknowledge in the gallery, they'll introduce them, or school children, or things like that, or former lawmakers, or the Chief Justice, or whoever is in the gallery. At the end, the announcements can be pretty, there's a luncheon going on, there's a informational briefing members might be interested in, or it could be, I want to wish happy birthday to the member for, representing Waimanalo or whatever. So sometimes it can be a little lighthearted. There are other things that appear on the agenda. I've already mentioned re-referrals, but there's also the agree, disagree, recommitments, recalls, and then there's the waiver of hearing notices. So as far as agree or disagree, this has a lot of words on it, but basically near the end of session, you'll see this, where if a bill has come through one chamber and crossed over to the other chamber and got changed while it was away in the other chamber, It gets returned to the originating chamber, and the originating chamber is usually going to say, oh, you changed our bill. We disagree with the changes. They take a vote on that. And just know that it's almost always they will vote to disagree. And then if on second thought, say the subject matter chair says, actually the changes they made were just fine, they can talk to leadership and ask that it be put back on the agenda to reconsider that disagree vote and instead to have members agree and send it off to the governor. And this is something, the recall from committee, the chairs have quite a bit of power, as we've seen, with their ability to bring something up for a hearing or not. And if they don't bring it up for a hearing, the bill dies in their committee. There is a mechanism for them, for the other members, to pull a bill out of committee if it's been stuck there and nothing's happening to it. It only takes a third of the members to do this. However, I've only seen it once in close to 20 years. So, and that was a very extraordinary occurrence. And so you won't see this happening very often. And it's because the structure of the chairs and their power is recognized by the members. So recommitment, this is something you'll see, we're seeing this a good bit with short form bills. And short form bills are the bills that you'll see that are pretty much empty of content. And if a committee chair has one of those short form bills in their committee and they come up with an idea they think is good and merits a hearing, they will put content into it. And what will happen is they'll do a decision making at the committee level to put content into the short form bill, move it forward to the floor, and then on the floor, they will just make a motion to recommit it to the committee so that the bill can be heard and testified on by the public. It's also a way that they can kill bills by not moving them forward. So this doesn't happen very often, but occasionally it will. You'll see speaker or president noting that, all the bills on the agenda up for a reading, they'll note that, whatever bill is going to be recommitted to committee and moved back into committee and not voted on and moved forward. And I've seen that happen quite, sometimes it's because they've found problems with the bill, or, there can be 1,001 reasons, but it doesn't happen very often, but just want you to be aware it can happen. So re-referrals, we've had a few questions. We just went through the the triple referral filing deadline, and so people were talking about re-referrals. Can I get this re-referred so that it only has 2 committees to go through instead of 3? So there are rules that you can find in both the Senate and the House under the legislature tab on the website. And usually what it does require the cooperation of the chairs involved. And one of the common re-referrals you'll see is for short form bills. So if I have a health bill that's a short form bill and it's empty, and I end up putting in something about health and waterways, it'll get re-referred so that water and land and health will both get a chance to review the legislation. And sometimes you do see that right after a deadline, the bill will be re-referred and all of a sudden it'll be alive again. So it can happen. Um, the waiver of hearing notices is something that happens that does not appear on the order of the day. Instead, when it comes to announcements, you'll see a chair rise and ask that a waiver be made so that their committee can hear, the following bills without giving 48 hours notice. And it's up to the president or speaker to say yes. They usually do say yes, while, you would sometimes they give a reason that they need to do this, um, something's come up and we didn't see this bill and, we want to get it in by the deadline. Sometimes they don't really give a reason at all. But it is worth watching the floor sessions as you get close to those deadlines, so you can be the first to hear if there is a waiver of a hearing notice and a bill that you thought was dead is actually alive again, and you could offer your testimony. As far as who's talking on the floor, it's, the speaker and or the president, depending on which chamber you're in, and then they recognize the different members. You'll also have the House or Senate clerk speaking. So at the beginning, when they take a roll call, for example, it's the clerk who will be calling all of the names. And then, the president will say, okay, great. And what's the next item? And they'll call the next item. And so the clerks keep things moving along and keep, following the order of the day. And so the members indicate that they would like to speak. They get recognized from the podium, and sometimes they're, depending on what's being discussed and what kind of motion is on the floor, there may be limits as to how many times you're allowed to speak. On the floor, there's often a time limit, and you may see people standing up and having quite a lot to say on a subject, and they'll be reaching their time limit, and another member will stand and say, Speaker, I'd like to yield my time, and so that the member who's speaking can continue on. And, it's a formal practice, so they make a motion to take the vote. This is where you'll see the floor leaders making motions. Sometimes there are interruptions. A point of order is always appropriate if a member sees something going on that is not within the rules of the parliament or the body. So if, for example, if I'm a senator and I'm speaking about a bill that's up for third reading, and I start going off on some other subject, one of my colleagues may rise and say, point of order, this is not addressing the matter on the floor. And then the president would decide whether or not that was true and whether to rein in the person speaking. The other thing you'll see is before a vote, a member may indicate that they want a ruling on a conflict of interest. And this could be, say there's a bill up about pay raises for teachers, and a member arises and says, I'm married to a school teacher, and the speaker or the president will say, no conflict. And this will stay for the rest of the session. And sometimes it's hard for us to understand, why would that not be a conflict? And if you look at the rules, it's really about whether the legislation would specifically benefit that member rather than a whole class or something like that. Anyway, I'm not a lawyer, so I can direct you to people who love to talk to you about that kind of thing. Now, they can make changes to a bill when it's on the floor, and you'll see this usually on third reading. If there's a bill that's made it to third reading, but they've realized that they actually need to change the bill in order to have enough support, or just change the bill to make it a better piece of legislation, a member can offer an amendment, it gets seconded, there's a vote as to whether they can discuss the amendment, and then they vote whether or not the bill should be changed. If the floor amendment is adopted, then if it's on third reading, since they've got to have 48 hours notice, the president or speaker will announce that we will put that amended bill on the order of the day someday 48 hours or more in advance. So near the end, right before crossover or second crossover, you'll see that sometimes on the Tuesday when they're doing a lot of third reading votes, they may make changes and then reschedule them for the crossover day. Doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. I've also seen members try to make floor amendments in order to make a bill go down. So they could try to make amendments to the bill to change, to change something, or to voice their objection to the bill. Just keep offering floor amendments. Every now and then you'll see that. When they take votes, they often, especially when we're near the end, near crossover, you'll see that they may have a consent calendar and then a calendar where they go one by one. And this varies between the House and the Senate. Every now and then you'll see, usually they go in the order that they're presented on the order of the day. Sometimes if there's a bill that's a little bit controversial, or there are floor amendments being prepared that aren't quite done yet, or something like that, they may move that item to the end of the agenda. So that happens every now and then. And then the members vote, they vote yes, no, aye or nay, or yes or no. They've also got the Kanalua vote, which means they're not voting yes or no. And they'll go on with the vote count, and then at the end, they'll come back to the member. And in the House and the Senate, they do it a little differently. One of the chambers says you can vote Kanalua twice, the other one 3 times. And if you do continue to vote Kanalua that many times, it's going to end up counting as a yes vote. So you don't see it a lot, but it does happen. And then you can be excused from a vote if you are sick and you've been excused by the presiding officer, or if the presiding officer has declared that there is a conflict of interest, you'll be excused from that vote. And they can do this by just a general voice vote. All those in favor say aye, say no. Sometimes when they're going through a lot of legislation, you'll see that they will call for the vote, and they'll ask for all the no's, all the with reservations, ayes with reservations. You will hear a wide variety of reservations. They may be aye with strong reservations, or, but it counts as a yes, regardless of how strong their reservations are. Sometimes they will do a roll call vote on a piece of legislation, but you don't see it a whole lot. And as far as dress, they're supposed to be they're supposed to show respect for the chamber. On Fridays, you'll notice they have Aloha Friday, so that's nice. As far as referring to other members, you'll notice that they don't say the senator or representative's name. Instead, they refer to my colleague who represents Hawaii Kai, for example, or the previous speaker, or the chair of Water Land. But they don't refer to people by name in the chamber. And really, when they're speaking on the floor, they're addressing the presiding officer. And so that's how they're supposed to be directing their comments, of course, for their colleagues to hear as well. And you'll sometimes see that they will ask to provide written comments into the journal. And, everything that happens on the floor gets recorded. They've got somebody who's recording everything that happens. And, rather than stand and make a 5-minute speech, I've got some comments, I've written it down, I'd like it put into the record. And so they just ask the presiding officer if that's okay, and they say yes. And sometimes they'll say yes, but you need to get them in by this time. And occasionally you'll also see someone make a really good floor speech, and other members say, I'd like those comments put into the journal as my own, so that they'll note that those people echoed that legislator's comments. The other people you'll see on the floor, and we do have, the maps of where everyone's sitting on the floor on the Public Access Room website under the current legislature tab. So just know you can always find them there. But in addition to the members, you're going to have the clerks. In this picture, the first desk that's in the center here is where the clerk and the assistant clerk and the journal person is, they sit and keep track of everything that's happening on the floor. You've also got the sergeant-at-arms members, and they are making sure that nobody who's not supposed to be on the floor comes on the floor, that if there's any problem, they're there to assist. If there are guests, they will escort them onto the floor. But really, they're there to make sure that order is kept. On a very rare occasion, they may have to, escort a member out. I've heard of that happening, but I've never seen it myself. Now, as far as what guides, what happens here, usually I kind of go in this order. If you go to the Hawaii Revised Statutes on the website under the laws and I can't remember now what it's called, but that that tab, research and laws and research, I think it's called, the tab. The first little link on the menu is the Hawaii Revised Statutes. And if you click on volume 1, you'll get this, from chapter 1 on, but above that, you'll get everything from the Constitution of the United States and the Hawaiian Homes Act, but also the Constitution of the state of Hawaii. And then if you look at the very beginning of that section of files, you'll get the whole table of contents of the Constitution. And that can be interesting to take a look at. There's a whole section on the legislature and how, enactment of bills and vetoes and things like that. Under the legislature tab on the website, you can find the House and Senate pages, and that's where you will find the rules that govern the House and the Senate. And the rules are agreed upon by the members. So that's, if you don't like what's in the rules, you appeal to the members to have the rules changed. Then there's also Mason's Manual, which hours of fun reading this stuff. But it's basically, just how parliamentary procedure usually goes, what kinds of motions require a second and when it's appropriate for different people to speak and all kinds of fun stuff. We do have a copy in the public access room in room 401 if you want to take a look at it. And I mentioned the journals. You can look at the wonderful big bound copies of the journals if you want, but it's a lot easier if it's in recent years to view them online. And again, you would go to the House and Senate pages on the website and just scroll down and you'll see journals and you just select the year and up it comes and you can look at whichever day, session day you'd like, or sometimes they have the whole journal in one big PDF link. And if you ever want old versions, the Legislative Reference Bureau library down in the basement of the building has lots of old books, so they can help you out. This is kind of what it looks like. It's a lot of words, you know, but it will say, you know, who's making whatever motion. It mentions what chair is presenting the committee report and all that kind of stuff. If you want to watch the sessions, you'd go to the order of the day page, and on the right-hand side, you'll see links to both the House and Senate floor sessions. If you want, you can go, you know, directly to the YouTube pages and then find the session broadcasts and, you know, look at it that way. Usually on the YouTube pages, then I think you choose playlists and then find sessions, 2024 sessions. And that is what we had prepared as far as going through and familiarizing you a little bit with what goes on the floor of the House and the Senate. And they'll be continuing on until, I think it's May, what day is it? May 3rd this year, which is when they will conclude their last 60th day on the floor, and we'll call the 2024 session done, and then we'll see what the governor does with all the bills that have passed. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and see if there are any questions or if there's anything that anybody had hoped I would cover that I didn't cover. Let's see. Oh, one question did come through, which is whether there's an email to reach all the House members. And the answer is no, there is no longer an email to reach all the House members. Instead, what you'd want to do is go to the Public Access Room's website, go to Current Legislature, and then you can find the legislative directory that lists all of the members' emails, and you could copy all of the House members and then just paste them into your email. If you want, contact the Public Access Room and I can email you all of the House members' emails separated by a semicolon that you could just cut and paste that and put it into your email message. I'm happy to do that. For the senators, there is one address. It's SENS, like sens, at capital spelled with an OL .hawaii.gov. Thanks, that's a good question. There used to be one email you could use to reach all the House members, but it's no longer working. And someone was asking about our Wednesday workshop on keeping up with the legislature. And wanting to know if it's possible to get that sent. What I'll do is I'll have that posted on our YouTube page, and you can go ahead and go there. It should be posted by the end of the day. Or if you did sign up for that workshop, we will go ahead and send you a link to the recording. Or reach out to us and I'll be happy to email it directly to you. So that's it. It's Friday afternoon. It's been a busy week here at the legislature, and it's been really nice hearing from so many people about, what they're trying to do to add their voices to the process. And it is such an important part of what goes on here at the Capitol is having people speak up, add their voice, ask for hearings, testify, all that good stuff. So thank you for all you do. And I'll just say aloha. Have a good day.